Chapter 10 is project management. Okay, so we worked our way all the way through this book. We're on the last chapter. Okay, we're actually ready to go out on a job and get busy, manage some projects. Okay. On page 10-5, they talk about the estimate bid process, 10-5. Okay, so they've kind of developed an imaginary company here, and they're talking about them. I like to read this last sentence on the page. They're talking about this company called BuiltRight. BuiltRight adds their overhead costs and profits, submits their bid to the owner or contractor for the construction project. So what they do is they have a flow chart of the estimate bid process. So I want you to be able to see that flow chart. Okay? I'd like for you to put an estimate bid process on this flow chart and follow it through. That's actually, important for you to know at a dinner party sometime. Okay, specifications, as in some case a book or is embraced on the plans, as notes that governing all the material to be used and the work to be performed on a construction project. The specifications have become interpreted as a legal document. Okay, specifications. Okay, now they have something called the CSI master format. All right, so each specific part of a construction project has a number, it has a division, and it has a number, and it's, it was developed by the American Institute of Architects. Actually, it's used, it says, bottom 10-6, the American Institute of Architects uses a method developed by the Construction Specifications Institute to organize specification bid packages into an industry standard. We already talked about the AIA documents being standardized documents. This CSI master format is a standardized document, okay, so that each specific part of a project is broken out and given its own title. Okay, this method divides the specifications into 50 divisions. Okay, Division 00 is procurement and contracting, and 49 technical divisions. All right, so here they all are. There's a whole list. They can just, they might just ask you about concrete and what is the division, and you're just going to tell them Division 3. Okay, and they actually break concrete down on 10-8. So it actually gives you an idea of it, gets very specific. So you have beam concrete, column concrete, slab concrete, and they all have the numbers, different categories, subcategories. Okay. You might want to know at the bottom of page 10-9 what a proposal is. Completed by the prime contractor or sub, applicable, submitted. It's a legal instrument. It binds the prime contractor to the owner. Okay, top of the next page. Now, when you're doing a contract, there is on page 10-10, there is a section that they call general conditions. Well, we talked about the AIA document, the 201 being the AIA's version of the general conditions of a contract. And these are all the things that are going to be in your general conditions. Okay. Talks about insurance, workmanship, substitutions, shop drawings, payments, and so forth. Those are all general conditions. But then they have something that's a little bit more detailed called supplementary general conditions. That's just the second main section of the general conditions. Supplementary conditions. They're usually more specific. And now they're talking about, they have some examples on 10-11, your job site offices, your temporary sanitary facilities, and so on and so forth. Okay? So we go through that. All right? And then you have some estimates at the bottom of 10-11. Construction estimating. Okay? So on and so forth. It's the analysis of the plans and specifications in an effort to determine the materials, labor, and costs necessary. So you have a definition of an estimate on the bottom of page 10-11. All right. You have, breaks it down into planning and estimating. And then, watch your wording. The wording is very important here. All right. You have a square foot method. Okay. All these different methods of estimating here. You have square foot method. Okay. Cost per square foot. All right. We know what that means. Detailed survey or piece method. You have a unit price, approximate estimates. Okay, so there's methods, and then there's types of estimates. Preliminary, okay, kind of self-explanatory. Detailed. Activity estimates, okay, this is activities. Material estimates, equipment estimates, manpower estimates, okay. So all these different, types of estimates here. Gives you some guidelines on how to do an estimate. Estimating controls, all right. Okay. (10-23) at the bottom, they talk about material estimates. Material estimates are used as a basis for material procurement. Okay, that's very self-explanatory, but I've seen that before. Okay. They talk a little bit on 10-24 about long lead items, second to the last paragraph. Those aren't readily available. People in construction now are saying that everything is a long lead item. There we go. Okay, we talked about equipment estimates earlier, 10-27. Now it takes us in more detail. Factors affecting the production, your equipment production. Okay, paragraph 1 on page 10-27. Okay, you're only going to be able to drive some of this equipment. You're not going to be able to drive speed limits. It says 40 to 65% of the speed limit. That's going to affect your production. 2, the type of material to be handled. 3, your safety factors, and they get kind of technical right there. So if you might have to read that paragraph carefully if you get this question about safety factors limiting production. Okay. Climate, number 7. Okay. And it talks about determining equipment production at the bottom. Now, labor estimates at the bottom of page 10-28. Now, we talked about preliminary and detailed before, but I want you to be able to find here. I really looked hard for this one. I was having a hard time finding this one last time I was taking an exam. Bottom of page 10-28, labor estimates. You have a preliminary manpower estimate and a detailed manpower estimate. What's important here is the last sentence of paragraph 1. A good preliminary should vary less than 15% of the detailed. Okay? A good preliminary should vary less than 15% from the detailed estimate. Okay. Now, what are we talking about? So we're still talking about labor here. We talked about equipment before. Now we're talking about labor still on page 10-30. What affects our labor production? Okay, weather, number 1, skill of the craftsman, time allotted for completion, number 3, size of the crew. Make sure you can find all these. Don't use your common sense on these questions, because the question is going to be a negative question. Which of the following does not affect production? Is not a factor affecting labor production. Just make sure you find it. Because it might surprise you as to which one they're looking for. Okay. Okay. And try to be able to find on 1032. These are going to be important to find these particular tables, right? This chart, especially at the top. They're going to give you a scenario. So let's look at, there's 4 columns here. Look at the third to the right column. So this is our third column. Sorry, third to the right. Third column on page 10-32. We have a table up here. Go down to the second row. Read along with me. Do you see where it says work area limited slightly? Mm-hmm. So your work area is limited slightly. You have partial material storage. There's some variation from design. You have an average job layout. So under those conditions, you're going to have average production somewhere between 55 and 75%. Okay? So that's how you read that chart. Okay? Whether or not that's practical in the real world, I don't know. But they're going to give you some production, you know, they're going to give you a scenario. You're going to have to find it on that table, and then you're going to have to tell them what percent they're looking for. Oh, 10-34. Here we are again. We're talking about construction contracts again. All right. And they discuss that there's a little bit different discussion of contracts here. 10-34. Let's read what they say. Although there are many different types of construction contracts, they may be grouped together into 2 large divisions. Okay, so this is the first time we've seen this 2 large divisions thing. Okay, so one division includes those contracts for which the contractor is selected on the basis of competitive bidding. Okay, so this is generally fixed price. Okay, everybody bids a price, it's competitive bidding. Almost all public construction contracts, much of the private, is done in this category. The second major division consists of those that result from direct owner-contractor negotiations. Negotiated contracts can be on any mutually, like a lump sum, cost plus GMP. So we've seen this lump sum, cost plus GMP, but we haven't seen this competitive bidding or fixed price, okay, one before. So it's just a little bit different take on the whole construction contract scenarios here. Okay, so keep that in mind. Top of page 10-38, project administration. Now there's a whole list of responsibilities that we're going to get to in a few minutes, but this one, it gets a little bit more in detail, so I want you to be able to find this as well. Responsibility for job progress lies with the project engineer or field superintendent. Okay. Next. Last paragraph. The project engineer or field superintendent completes the job status report for each project each month, indicating percentage completed by each major construction activity. The forms generally are pre-formatted, so on and so forth. They serve as a basis for monthly requisitions and also as a basis for monthly calculation of estimated total job cost. Okay. And so that's a little bit about the superintendent. Got some forms that we don't really pay a lot of attention to. Subcontractors. Okay, once again, we said 10-54. When you talk about the AIA 401, you know, when you hear the term subcontractor, you're going to think AIA 401, which is great. But now this is general information about subcontractors. So, you know, you have to make that distinction whether or not it's a specific issue and time frame on a contract, or is this more general information. And in the contractor's manual, it's general information. Various local and national surveys indicate that many general contractors subcontract approximately 50% of the work. When you add to this additional percentage of total costs represented by material purchases, 50 to 70% of total job costs are generally in the subcontractor purchase area. Okay, so on and so forth. Change orders. Don't really spend a lot of time talking about change orders in this chapter here. Okay, scheduling, 10-57. All right, the network analysis technique. and it gives you a little bit of a background about this network analysis technique. After World War II, they started coming up with these, project schedule, analyses and what have you. Second paragraph, second line. The planning methods were those that had been developed for use in manufacturing. Construction management attempted to use these same techniques. These techniques had significant limitations. In an effort to overcome these limitations, in the late 1950s, this new system of project planning, scheduling, and control came into widespread use in the construction industry. And then you have some methods: critical path analysis, CPA, critical path method, and project evaluation and review technique. So these are different, all come under the heading of network analysis. Okay, and then there's some advantages there. Remember I was telling you earlier about taking the exam, and there were two answers that were correct, and there was only one correct answer, but there was actually two correct answers based on the word for wording. It was number 2 and number 3 here. And I can't tell you what the difference was, and I really can't even tell you which one I think is more correct. I read it over and over and over again, and I really couldn't figure out which one was more correct. I could have been missing something in there, but it was number 2 and number 3. Interdependencies between jobs or tasks, and thus it enables construction personnel. And they just changed like personnel to people. They just changed it very minor, both of these. So watch for that. Bottom 10-58 project planning. You have preliminary planning, and I want you to make sure you can find the note. Preliminary phase should identify between 10 and 15 activities key to major construction phases of the project. And then on detailed planning, it tells you that under that note 1, micro activities should be between 3 and 15 days. So you have a preliminary and detailed planning. You have those notes there I want you to be able to find. On 10-59 at the bottom, we're talking about network construction still. A network is used to represent any sequencing of priorities among the activities which constitute a project. This sequencing is determined by 2 types of dependency. A hard dependency, are based on the physical characteristics of the work. You've got to do a foundation before building the walls. They're generally inflexible. Soft dependencies are more flexible. Okay, do you start at the south or the north side of the project? Doesn't really matter. Okay, project schedules on page 10-73. One of the first tasks which must be accomplished by the contractor after awarding the contract is a project schedule. It's prepared by the project manager. It should be jointly prepared with the material and equipment schedule. So that's that first paragraph on 10-63.
Yeah, you said 73. We're all looking at
Did I say 73?
Yeah, we're all going.
Sorry about that.
What are we doing here? Yeah.
Okay. 63. 10-63. All right. Got all the way through. 9.5 chapters before that happened. Okay. So that's that first paragraph. The project schedule should be jointly prepared with a material and equipment schedule. The project schedule should be a minimum in conformance with the contract requirements in sufficient detail to allow adequate control of the project. There's like 5 potential questions in these 2 paragraphs. Formally and reviewed and updated at least once every 30 days. Progress is posted weekly. Indicates shop drawing, and just so much of this there's more than 5 questions. There's probably 10 questions out of those 2 paragraphs. Scheduling guidelines. They talk about a job logic table there in step 2, so make sure you can find that job logic table. Short-term schedules, 10-64. Short-term schedule is a detailed explanation of the subsequent 2 weeks of construction activities. This type of schedule is important because it makes the contractor review the logic of the overall project schedule. It highlights critical material deliveries, critical decisions must be made to prevent a negative impact. This next paragraph is important. The short-term schedule informs in-house staff and subcontractors of the intentions, gives them the required information. Superintendent, the individual charged with the coordination of the day-to-day activities, should take the primary role in developing the short-term schedule. The project manager and engineer should review the schedule. Okay, so on and so forth. Yes.
Good table talk.
Say again?
Good table talk.
Good table talk there. Yeah, very good. Yeah, this stuff is, I mean, it's just really target-rich environment, as they say, for test questions. Okay. 10-67, they talk a little bit about back charge preparation. And let's see, does it say a contractor has to perform as subcontractor material vendor will proceed to recover the cost in the form of a back charge? The contractor must be sure there's a legitimate reason. Subcontractors should be given every opportunity to perform the work. Okay. Subcontracts. Once again, more stuff about your subcontractor. Define any business or entity or labor material in the project. This includes cranes, hoists, and other equipment rented with operators. Okay. There's 3 things that they want you to have before you allow somebody to do any subcontract work on the job. 10-67, last 3 paragraphs. You want them to have their insurance certificate, payment and performance bond, and a subcontract agreement. Okay, cost control on page 10-70. All right. I want you to note that you have 3 types of cost controls here. I don't go into each one in detail, but just understand the overall heading is cost control, and there's 3 of them. There's a monthly indicated outcome report, there's a weekly labor distribution report, and a weekly labor distribution analysis. Those are 3 cost controls. And that's an ideal negative question. Which of the following is not a cost control? They'll list all these 3, and they'll list something else that seems very reasonable. And you're gonna have to find those right there. Okay. I talked to you earlier about the list of job responsibilities of the various people on the job. That starts on the bottom of page 10-71. Project responsibilities, project management and supervisors. Yeah, the project manager at the bottom, 10-71, all of the responsibilities, they carry on to the top of the next page. Don't forget that. You might want to put your little arrow that shows that it goes to the top of the next page. 10-72, all the responsibilities of the project superintendent, engineer, and the accountant, and so forth. And then you have a list of definitions. So you're going to want to find those, all those definitions. Okay, that pretty much concludes chapter 10, but there are some additional stuff. There's some additional things that you go through that you do want to know. You need to know. And that is, starting on page 10-91, environmental compliance for the construction industry. At the bottom of page 10-93, there's a discussion of an emergency response plan. Every work site, including your company backlot, should have an emergency response plan. The plan should address both worker safety and environmental protection. The plan should include, the plan should include training employees on what actions to take in case of an emergency, where to get help and required notifications. It's important that every person knows his or her role, limitations in an emergency. Okay, hazardous waste on page 10-95. There's discussion of PCBs. Okay, last bullet. Last sentence and the last bullet on page 10-95. How long do you have to keep those records? 3 years. right. Mhm. Wetlands on page 10-98. Unless specifically exempted, dredging, filling, construction, or stormwater treatment activities conducted require a permit under the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. That's the primary application agency for the state. U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is a permitting agency for the federal government. There you go. And that's it. That's all of chapter 10. That's all that book. You've gotten all your math.